All right,
Okay.
well, welcome back, fellas. Back to another episode here of the Blind Pig, courtesy of BGObsession.com, the one of the greatest Redskins / Washington football team forums on the internet. The regulars are somewhat back. We got John, myself, Derek, Paul, and Bob, and we're joined by Bruce Berman, who's the newest, kind of a returning member of BGO. He's been a member for a long time, but he has kind of ghosted the way a lot of fans have done over the last few years. Not very much to follow up with. So, before we get into the meat and potatoes of what we're here for, of course, I've got to throw out my my random wild card thing to talk about, just because it's fun to do so. And Montez Sweat was quoted this past week, and this is the quote. We talk about it all the time, breaking records and stuff like that. I personally want to go get the combined sack record that the guys got back before. We talk about it all the time. Long story short, he wants him and Chase Young to set the single season sack record for a tandem of pass rushers in the NFL. What? I mean, I personally think that they've got the talent over the course of their career to maybe do it. But we're talking about a second-year player and a third-year player who combined had, 18 sacks last year?
Yeah, what's the number, Derek?
It's like 47.
No, 39.
40. Okay,
39.
40.
Read it today. So 40 would be a new record.
Correct. 20 and 20 from Sweat and Young. Is it possible?
I mean, anything's possible, especially because we really beefed up our secondary in the off season, which might seem like a stretch how that's related, but I think it's going to put a lot more pressure on the quarterback.
Well, double pump is the difference between a sack and a incompletion.
So I mean, I do think it's a stretch. It's probably like most fans of other teams would laugh at that. They just got here, really, they just arrived. But I mean, the talent's there. I love that he's saying that. I love that he's putting that out there, because I think what he's verbalizing is we're going to do big things. And of course, the flip side of that is show me, don't tell me. But I don't see it happening. But I mean, I love that they're putting that out there as a goal.
Anybody want to hazard a guess as to how old that record is?
Oh, I think I read that the other day. I don't remember exactly.
I'll tell you this. It was Chris Dolman and Keith Millard that did it. Vikings, 1989.
Wow.
I graduated from college that year.
So this record predates our last Super Bowl. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so that's
crazy.
30
in an era where they
record.
Pass crazy too. That's a really crazy part.
I see, and that's why I went and looked it up, John. Because that record was set in a point in time where most offenses in the NFL were pretty balanced, and now you got guys dropping back 45 and 50 times a game. You got to have half again as many opportunities to drop the guy with the ball as they did back then. So,
but equally, you're talking about an O-line where Washington was renowned for the hogs, and the heaviest guy was sub 300.
Right.
Now we're talking about 360-pound left tackles that can run a 4.7. And
so I a couple things. I have a couple thoughts on this. First of all, I'm glad that they're aiming for that, because the last thing you want to hear from anybody is that they're aiming for the dirt. You want to aim for the sky, as far as I'm concerned. Why not aim for whatever that number is? And I think it's absolutely possible. Look at, I just looked it up. Dexter Manley had 18 and a half sacks in 1986. Charles Mann, 14 and a half in 85. Put those 2 years together. What do you got? 33 or 4 or something like that, if my math is correct. So anything is possible. But these days you have to have a good secondary to help that out. Secondary holds it tight. Line gets a little bit more time. Next thing you know, 39 sacks. Why not? Aim high. Don't aim for the dirt.
It's great that these guys are setting these high goals. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. When I read that quote the other day, it didn't sit too well with me because for me, I want these guys to be talking about winning championships. I mean, personal accolades, stats, those are great. And yes, it could be argued, that if these guys do what they're setting out to do, well, that's going to go a long way towards helping you win a championship. But at the end of the day, for a young group like we have, I want these guys focused more on team-oriented goals, which is winning a championship.
Buy in, win the championship. Yeah, I'm
So,
with you.
Here's the
That's
other
fair.
thing to consider, and I'm going to parlay it into a little bit of another conversation that I'd like to get into. The quarterbacks that we play this year are Josh Allen, Matt Ryan, Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Dak Prescott twice, Russell Wilson. And those are the good ones. That's not including, I didn't even include the Chargers with the Herbert or the Raiders with whoever they trot out at quarterback, or
Carr.
Daniel Jones, who averaged almost 100 yards rushing over the course of a couple games against us last year. So I like the optimism, but you ain't sacking Pat Mahomes enough times to get to 40, buddy. Like, I hate to say it that way, you know what I'm saying? But let's keep our eye on the prize, the way Paul said, and let's win football games. I support them wanting to aim for the record, and I guess it's a lose-lose situation, because if you say that and you don't get it, then you try to show somebody up. And if you say that and any fan's going to nitpick, and they're going to say, why would you even come out and say those kinds of things? But to take this to the next conversation, many people are putting us as a top 3 defense in the league. And I don't think they're looking at our schedule. Where is your guys' estimation about where we can, with this schedule, still be an effective and successful team and not be top 3? Because I don't think we get there with the offenses that we're facing this year.
Well, I guess it's interesting you brought schedule into it, because strength of schedule into it, because I wouldn't have even have thought of that. I mean, I guess when I hear a top 3 defense, it's just looking at in the abstract of, are we one of the 3 best defenses on paper?
In a
Not
vacuum.
necessarily will we be there in the stats at the end of the year. So I think you're right. I think we've got at least on paper, and I think somebody mentioned this the other day on the site, that the schedule, you can't really judge the strength of schedule based on previous years. We know that Tampa Bay will be good, and we know that some teams are perennially good and have talent, but there's a lot of shifting from year to year. So it's kind of risky to really base anything off of the strength of, the previous team in the year before that. But I do think we have a top 5 defense on paper. I don't have any idea what's going to happen this year. I really don't know.
I don't think any of us do. I think there's so many variables. Like you said, in a vacuum, maybe we're top 3. I mean, some people are saying we're the top defense, but it's so hard to tell, especially with strength of schedule. But what gets me every time, offense plays into defense, defense plays into offense. Our offense has done historically over the last bunch of years nothing. And all this talk about quarterback and whether Fitz is going to have his magic or whatever. I think we're just like thirsty as fans right now for this team to just have somebody can, get it close to a receiver once in a while and spread it around. I keep hearing all this talk about, this person.
Expectations, Bruce.
Yeah. We have such a low bar for these quarterbacks at this point. So you meet even any of just the modicum of those expectations and have somebody just consistent. Gibbs won with 4 different quarterbacks in the Super Bowl. All of them were great in their own way, but also crappy in other ways. None of them, Doug Williams was MVP. He's not in the Hall of Fame. Rippon had a great year or 2, but he's not in the Hall of Fame. Theismann's not in the Hall of Fame. And, they're all, wait, who won the other one? Oh, no.
We didn't win another one.
We've only won 3, Bruce.
Okay,
We've been
3.
to 4.
We've been to 5. Haven't we been to 5? We've been to 5.
We've won.
Yeah, been to 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Theismann quarterback 2.
Okay,
Theismann
so
quarterback the first 2 under Gibbs, lost to Oakland.
All right, you're right. I was at that Oakland one. That
Don't
was-
talk about that game.
Anyway, but what I'm getting at is like we're just so thirsty for anything, just the smallest. If they can hit the lowest threshold of accuracy and competence and keep the offense on the field for more than a minute, 3-and-outs killed us, turnovers kill us, just everything has killed us for 25 plus years. So if the offense can show up at all, and I believe that they will this year, a little bit at least, I got high hopes as always. But I do that every year. But if they can if it's all about balance, if we have more balance, yes, strength of schedule is against us. But the same token, I feel like, balance on the team could help us. And we haven't had that in a long time. So, defense gets a little more rest, gets a little help. They help the offense. They score, it all works together. It's a cohesive thing. So I think as the team lifts up as a team, things improve. I hope. Hell if I know, really.
I guess my bigger point here was trying to temper the expectations of fans because we're all Washington fans. If we don't finish top 3, everybody's going to say, well, why'd they take a step back? Why weren't they as good as they could have been? Coming into the season, they were supposed to be a top 3 defense. They ended 7th. How is that acceptable? But then we're going to look at it and say, well, look who we're up against.
I don't think it matters where we finish statistically, Derek.
Yeah, I don't care.
Assuming the team is
Winning.
competitive on the field and bringing home good results, right? I mean, here's the thing: if the offense, all right, well, we'll just talk about Dallas, right? Because Dallas is one of those teams that I think is going to be. I think Dallas has the potential to hurt this defense. Dallas has the potential to hurt every defense in the league. But
yeah, they also have the ability to suck. I mean,
well, but see, that's where I'm going with this, Bruce, is they also have a defense that's highly suspect at this point in time.
and a great
offense
running
can-
back who can't hold on to the ball.
We can put some points up, right?
Yeah.
So
for
if
sure.
we beat Dallas 33-30, and those 30 points drop us from top 5 to top 8 in terms of defense in the league, do the fans really give a shit?
No.
I don't think the answer is yes. I think we don't care at all because we beat Dallas, right?
See, I think you give the fans a lot of credit. I think if we win 33-30, you're going to see legit concern that this defense is not as good as it was advertised,
Yeah, that's true.
and that it should have held Dallas to less than 30 points.
Yeah,
It's true, but
Dallas
it'll be more fun. At least we've had
Well-
no fun for 25 plus years. It's disgusting. We all remember Green Bay beating us by a point on a Monday night, long time ago, like 45-46. I think we lost or something like that. Some crazy game like that. But at least we walked away laughing and smiling and crying. It's so funny. Kevin, you have to me encapsulated the Redskin Washington football team fan for the last bunch of years, in that we're trying to temper expectations because our expectations have been pretty high every year and they always get dashed. We're so what's the word I'm looking for? We're beaten down as a fan base to some degree.
But see,
And-
I'm trying to contradict that. I'm trying to tell everybody, hey, it's okay if we're 8th because look who we're up against. If we go
Yeah.
10-7 and we're 8th in defense, don't blame the defense. You see,
That's
you know what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. But
I think
Oh, you look like
Rivera
you're
is
ready
going
to
to temper
talk.
that stuff. I think Rivera is going to. I think if you ask Ron Rivera that question, say, look, it's this tough league. Every week is tough. We don't know. I mean, we don't know. That's why we go out there and play. We're going to try to win every game and we'll see where the chips fall. And I mean, he's going to give you all the football speak
Yeah.
you can handle, but to a certain extent, it's true. It's like, you really don't know. I mean, this team literally, here's the range. They could win 6 games or they could win 14. They
Yeah.
really
Mhm.
could. I
They're
don't know
really
which
good.
it's going to be.
And you know what else? Injuries will play a role too. I mean, I heard somebody on the radio this morning saying, sort of dialing back on last year, the fact that we won the division, saying, yeah, but Giants beat us twice and they didn't have Barkley. And the Cowboys, we beat them, but they didn't have Dak. I mean, yeah, but what about all those years we've had injury after injury? We've lost players too. It goes both ways. The teams that get lucky, the teams that stay healthy are often the ones that win it all. It's about getting on a roll at the right time, hopefully towards the latter half of the season, staying healthy, had the ball bounce your way once or twice, on a fumble or an interception. It's such a random game, and that's what I love about it. I mean, it hurts like hell when we lose, but it's fun. It's a roller coaster. Who knows? Any year could be anybody's year.
We're due though.
We are way due.
We are due.
We are due.
Jets would argue, John.
So speaking of on, we are due. I've avoided this topic for a long time. We're on what, episode 14 or 15 of this, and I have not wanted to talk about this topic because it has been a dead horse that has been beaten by everything since the second they decided to change the name. But it is probably time that we address the name change. I think I can speak for everybody on this podcast to say we don't agree with the name change. They will forever be the Redskins in our heart. We will never forget Redskins. You can't change it. You can't take it away from us. We have our own personal opinions about the legitimacy of why it got changed. We don't necessarily have to get into that right now because it can start a conversation that is volatile. But what we can get into is a little bit of a fun activity of let's take Redskins out of it and let's talk about what we wouldn't mind seeing the new name of our team being. This isn't really a scripted format, so I don't really care how we pop it off, or if you guys have any particular way you want to do it. I'm game for whatever. I think we each have, I don't know, a handful of names. I've got 5 written down. It was hard to come up with 5 names that I would accept. But nonetheless, I guess I did it. I guess these don't suck as bad as a lot of the other ones out there. So, John, this was kind of your idea. I'll let you tee things off a little bit.
Well, I've said
we'll
all
just kinda
along.
react.
I've said all along that you would never find a name that everyone liked, and they will not. And I do think I'll just get this out there. Jason Wright is a fine young man. He's a young man to me. He's a smart guy. I have nothing but respect for him. But I think dragging it out, I think they could have come out the day that they announced that they were done with the Redskins.
Look what Cleveland did. Bam.
We're going to be the burgundy and gold, and people would have squawked and bitched, and they would have mourned, and then we'd be well over it. We'd be entrenched with the burgundy and gold at this point. So I think they made a tactical mistake with that.
I agree.
That they continue with, but it is what it is. I just think they've created a lot more angst around it than was necessary. I wanted them to go with the Warriors, and I'm a military guy. I think football, if you look at the sport of football and the nomenclature, the language of football, it's riddled with military language.
Hold on, I gotta look up nomenclature.
DC
Didn't
is a military town.
Didn't he run that bar to the Liberty Bell or something like that?
So that was my preference, but that's off the table. And I wasn't happy with the way they did that because, kowtowing to a bunch of advocates who we've already given up our lifetime name of our franchise to meet that need. That just rubbed me the wrong way. It's like, we respectfully changed our name for the Native American community, and we're done with that. So I feel like associating that with Native Americanism is just a stretch. And I mean, it would have been like two minutes into the announcement of where the Warriors going forward. It would be clear that
there's Golden State Warriors. Nobody's looking at them. So
So if I had to pick a name, the first one on my list would be the Wolves. And I know a lot of people are like, it's generic. I got in a Twitter storm with a guy because he accused me of being a closet Red Wolves guy. And I said, I think the Red Wolves movement is kind of like a Pokemon character. I never liked that. The Red Wolves thing, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I do think Wolves, there's no canine mascot in the entire NFL, unlike a lot of other sports. It's a fierce animal. It's to be feared. The logo possibilities and the swag possibilities are off the chart. So it's simple, but at this point, I think a solid generic name would be good to go. And we don't have to worry about associating it with the team history. You already dismantled the team history. I'm sorry. You can try to wordsmith your way back into our good graces by giving lip service to that, but you already destroyed our history. And so to me, that's out the window. I think Wolves would be a nice, solid, unoffensive name to most people. And I could live with that, but that's the first one on my list.
Full disclosure, Wolves is on my list, so I'll go ahead and mark that one off there. But I do think it would be kind of badass on like 3rd and 11 to have 80,000 people howling,
Yeah,
You know-
I agree with that.
or watching the defense kind of run around and howl at each other. You know what I'm saying? Just give something to connect with the fans.
The Wolf's Den instead of the Dog Pound, you know. that
Right.
whole thing. I love the idea of the Wolves, and frankly, I don't have a problem with Red Wolves. It doesn't bother me either.
I take it over some of the alternatives I've heard over the last couple
Yeah.
months. If it came-
Warriors,
It
didn't they
is,
lose?
yeah.
The Warriors, didn't they? I mean, they had. What's the story I read that Dan Snyder had that
Yeah,
He owned the
register,
name
and he
rights
lost
for
it.
an indoor football league.
Right, but then he
name
lost
for the
it.
Washington Warriors but I think it died. I think he just let it go.
I think he lost the copyright or the patent or whatever registration.
I don't think they're going to go that direction, but that's just my gut feeling.
The one
never
thing I'll
know.
say about in regards to what you said there, John, with the Wolves, the one thing that I'll say in regards to that is I think it gives the franchise a lot of opportunities to connect with the younger ranks in the fan base. I think that that's something that they can really rally around, in terms of rallying the future fan base. I think there's a lot of promise there.
Although they're all young, they're probably spelt with an F.
Wolves.
Autocorrect.
Washington Wolves.
Oh, all right, John. Do you want to hit another one, or somebody else volunteer one up?
Why
What do we
don't
got?
we just kind of round robin, and whatever we have left over, we'll spout out at the end.
I heard Sentinels was one that was being talked about.
That's
I-
on my list too.
I don't
That's on my list.
love it, but I don't hate it. You know, it could grow on me.
There's something about the 3-syllable thing. It's like Washington Sentinels. It kind of, I think that, I know that sounds ridiculous, but it kind of rolls off your
No,
tongue a little bit. I don't know what the hell it means, but it's
What,
kind of like one
Sentinels?
of those. I mean, I know what the word means, but I don't
Oh,
really
okay.
know.
it's a
what it
blue.
means.
I think it's another, military illusion, alluded name like
Tomb of the Unknown.
we are the Sentinels.
The
We are
Tomb of the
watching
that's-
over.
I was going to go Tomb of the Unknown. They're called the Sentinels.
Yeah, and that's if we're going to have a quote unquote mascot, that's probably the least offensive to me. I don't want
Polarizing. It's the least polarizing.
Yeah, it's the one I'm most okay with. How about if I put it that way? All right, Mark's not here, so I guess I get to speak for both of us. Mark and I have both put forward the concept of ditching the mascot entirely and going with Washington Football Club, just like
I don't mind that either.
And my reasoning when I first brought this up, and it holds today, is if I were the team, I think I would come out and say, there's nothing out there that holds the same allure for us as the old mascot, and we
So
don't
why
want
try?
to do harm to the old mascot. So we're not going to have a mascot. We're going to be the Washington Football Club. We're going to be DCFC, however you want to do that, right? And it's kind of a call to world soccer. And yeah, I'm a big soccer fan at this point in time in my life. So I guess that probably plays into it. But I just like the idea of the team coming out and going, you know what? We don't believe there's a better mascot out there than what we have. So we're not going to do it. But I don't like Washington Football Team, oddly enough. I change it to
Stupid.
club.
It's not odd at all. It's a stupid name. It's a total non-name. I mean, I'm telling you, people that want the WFT to continue, it's like that Jerry Seinfeld episode. I'm going to return this for spite.
Yeah.
Sorry, sir, I can't. We're not allowed to let you return something for spite. It has that vibe to it. It's like, who are we spiting? Ourselves. I don't get it. I have
I was-
Football Club on my list also.
I was disappointed when they first announced football team that it wasn't football club.
Right.
Um,
Me too, Bruce.
I do, as much as I don't look, football team has grown on me. It's easy to go, yay, go team, like we're in college in 1945. But it's also, it's hard not having a mascot in some way. And I know it sounds like a ridiculous statement, but sometimes I miss having a mascot of any type. Not that I necessarily ran around like an Indian all these years, but at least there was something. We're the Redskins. We're the whoever, and
Identity.
we're the football team.
So I
football.
can rebut that real quick, and I'm gonna probably get in the good graces of Paul over there. Is there the Montreal Canadiens are just the Canadiens, but they're known as the Habs. So they do have a name, they have a nickname, but their team name is not. There's no mascot. And the Hab is short, and I can't even say the word because it's some French word for police officer. But that's the direct. So it theoretically you could go Washington Football Club, and they could be known as I don't know, whatever group you want to call it. In some evolution of that. Now I don't know where you would even start, but you could have a guy, I don't know, some sort of a mascot that represents the team, and it can evolve from there. I don't even remember the history of Habs and how they became that, but because they were the Canadians, and you can't just trot some guy out in a Canadian flag with, to represent that, they had to spin it into some way to market the team.
Yeah, I don't know.
I would love to know. I would love to have been a fly on the wall when they decided to change the name and they came up with Washington Football Team. It just seems like a name that was going to immediately be mocked. And I know, like, WTF, I've written that 100 times by mistake. And then I'm like, well, that actually makes sense as a Redskins fan over the last 20 years. But anyway, I hope they don't stick with WFT, just because I know, like, you'll see ESPN, it's got Cowboys, Giants, Eagles, football
Washington.
team. It just
Well,
looks, no, not Washington
yeah.
football team. It just looks idiotic.
It does.
What's even
I
better
hate
is when
that.
they poke fun intentionally, and it says
I think
Dallas,
they are
Philly, New York football team. They don't even. It's whatever.
It's frustrating.
So, Wolves and Sentinels have been talked about. Another name that I think people are sleeping on, and it would probably be very easy to at least accustom a segment of the fan base, is the DC Defenders.
I have DC Defenders on my
That's
list.
the current name of the XFL team. So, the XFL team that went bankrupt. How easy would it be to walk over and stroke them a check and say, hey, let's have that, and you could spin it a couple different ways.
Or federals or diplomats.
Go way back to the U. Oh, there you go. Call back to
The dips.
I don't
Or how
like.
about-
I don't
Dip-
like.
I
federals
remember-
and
Diplomat
diplomats. It
season
doesn't-
ticket holder right here, baby.
I
doesn't
remember
roll like
So wait,
Defenders.
that would-
I'm old enough to remember when they were taking submissions for the Capitals team name. I think I was a kid, and I submitted the Ambassadors, I think, is my submission.
We rarely have an offense, so DC Defenders would work in that.
That works.
Well, I know you have probably 4 or 5 names in paragraphs written out, and you haven't stopped talking the whole podcast. What do you got, buddy?
So I have 3 written down, 2 of which you guys have already talked about, that being the DCFC and the Sentinels. Before I give you my first pick, just one thing I wanted to comment on in regard to the Sentinels. I think that is nice in the sense that it's very city centric or very regional centric. And there's 2 pro franchises recently that have long-standing traditions and histories that have been forced to change their names as well. The Cleveland Indians in baseball, and up here in Canada, the Canadian Football League team, the Edmonton Eskimos, changed their name to the Edmonton Elks for the start of this
It's
season.
amazing how that didn't make any press down here.
No.
That's the first I've heard that.
Okay,
That's amazing.
very, very big news here, though, at the time that it happened. And obviously the Indians went with the Guardians, and the Guardians is a reference to the Guardians of Transportation Towers that they have on the Hope Memorial Bridge.
Took them
And up
about
here,
35 seconds to come up with that too, by the way, not 3 years, like 30.
And
That's right.
it's very convenient. The last 5 letters did not change, so the font is identical. Everything else is the same.
Yeah,
And
but you know that did you see that one logo? They had a few different logos, but the one with the baseball and the wings, that looked like they took about 35 seconds.
We can work on the marketing.
That was terrible. That made me feel like, I mean, that was like, 7th grade intro to art on, that's terrible. Anyway.
yeah. So, and as well with the Elks, elk have a very large presence in the western part of Canada. So, in what I'm trying to say is that with both of those teams, they went with the city-centric approach. And I think if we went down that same road with Sentinels, I think that the locals could certainly rally around something like that and buy into it, especially people that are very resistant to the change. So that was just something I wanted to make mention of in regards to Sentinels and why I can get behind it. But my ultimate number one choice right from the get-go has always been just call us the Washington Burgundy and Gold. They've always talked about meshing the present with the past with this name choice. And if you go with Burgundy and Gold, what a perfect way to do that. It's familiar to all of us. Even in our time as Redskins fans, it was very, very common for the media to refer to us as the Burgundy and Gold, or the fan base to say Burgundy and Gold. It's something that we're very, very familiar with, something we're comfortable with. And I like the idea that, just go with something simple like that. It emphasizes the uniqueness of our colors as well. I believe outside of the Cleveland Cavaliers, there is no other pro franchise that has those colors, burgundy and gold. And in regards to the Cavs, they've changed their colors a few times over the course of their history, as far as I know. So you're not necessarily forcing fans to embrace something new. All in all, with this name, you're acknowledging a sense of pride in who you've always been, the burgundy and gold. You're rallying around that. I like that it's a no-nonsense name. It gives the message that we're just here to play football and we're here to knock the snot out of you. So I'd very simply go with that. And
what a score! And what a score for BGO! Seriously.
Yeah, our Google rankings are going through the roof, man. Like right now, as we're talking about it, probably. Yeah, I like that. I've liked that. Surprisingly, though, Paul, I don't know if you've seen this. I've seen a lot of pushback on Twitter and social media. For some reason, a certain segment doesn't like it. But I mean, I think that's going to be true no matter what you pick. There's going to be 25% that screaming and moan about it.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, if you step back and you think about it, there are some ridiculous names around the NFL, like Packers.
Yeah.
Detroit Lions. I've never seen a lion roaming around Detroit. And I've seen several games in Detroit because I grew up in a border town in Canada and would travel into Michigan quite often. There are a lot of ridiculous names. At the end of the day, if you win and you consistently become a winner in this league,
nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Yeah. And I think Paul, I think you just hit the nail on the head. It's not going to make any difference what the team picks for a name.
We're winning.
If we go out this year and put up 13 wins and challenge for a Super Bowl, nobody's going to care. I mean, that's at the end of the day, there'll be some
people would almost take more
there would
pride.
be some fussy people.
Yeah.
But for the most part, Washington will be so happy to have a winning football team that they won't care.
No.
I almost feel like there's the reason why we won't end up with something logical like that, Paul, and that was my very first thought as an alternative name. I think there's Jason Wright and all of the new regime that they brought in, even though they pay lip service, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but they spend a lot of time talking about associating it with the team's history and everything else. I don't think they'll go with burgundy and gold because I think they want to put their stamp on it. I think they want to be able to say, we created this and we involved the fans. This is what we came up with. So I just think there's kind of a bias against something that's simple and straightforward and logical. I think and that's what scares me because the truth is, yeah, we'll get used to whatever the name is, but I really hope it's not something just embarrassing. I mean, and that's my main concern.
put it in a different context for you, John. I mean, I know that officially Dan Snyder is on hiatus, but we all know the truth of that, right? I mean, I don't think anybody here is I don't think anybody here is blind enough to think that Dan Snyder is not still involved in some way, shape, or form with the day-to-day operation of the team. He will be instrumental in the choice that goes into this. At the end of the day, Dan is a money-making machine. Say what you like about him. He can't produce a winning football team for anything, but dear God, can the man figure out how to turn a nickel into 2 dimes? And he can do it in a heartbeat. Whatever they come up with will be marketable.
So
And as much sense as Burgundy and Gold makes, Paul, I don't see it as particularly marketable from the money-making perspective. And nor do I see DCFC or Washington Football Club as being marketable either, to be completely honest with you. I don't think any one of those 3 options has much traction financially speaking. They will want a mascot. They will want a more traditional NFL name. And I don't think Dan's brave enough to get outside the NFL mold.
So I'm glad you brought that up. So I've got 2 more. Does anybody else have any more?
Oh yeah, I got like.
Yeah, I can come up with a couple.
All right. Well, then I'll
Go
go
for it, Derek.
first.
You
First,
go,
I'll
Derek.
go over the one that I'm the most near and dear to me. One that I think makes way too much sense, and I think people are sleeping on it. And I think it'll instantly get encompassed by the largest majority of the fans in the league, or fans of the team, carryover fans, and that's the Warthogs.
I have that written down.
And hear me out. The old school guys, you're the Hogs. It's literally the image you think of when you think of what, our identity is the Hogs. That is what made our Super Bowl victories. You can market it as the Warthogs, and you can put the animal. You can do the military jet and include that in your military salute to service and tribute. You can spin that with even more military involvement. And at the end of the day, the colors don't need to change. You can very simply become like you said, with the Indians and the Guardians and their first, 30-second drawing for their rendering of the logo. Warthogs is so simple and basic to turn it into some sort of, like, you could spin off the Razorbacks. There are no Warthogs in the NFL. There's no Warthog professional team.
But there is britches. But there is britches, and they'll make a big comeback using that.
As long as it's not Warhogs, because
Warthog.
there's no
Warthog.
such thing as a Warhog. I've seen that a lot, like the Warhogs. What? What are you talking about? What the hell is a Warhog?
Should we get to sing
I'm
Hakuna
talking-
Matata when we score? That's what-
Why
It's
not?
no worse, it's no worse than
Hey.
Baby Shark.
I was about to say,
Disney
Ned
can have-
Park was singing freaking Baby Shark during the World Series
Disney
run.
sue us over that one.
But I'm thinking you can have flyovers from A10s on every home game. You know what I'm saying? You want to talk about
Yeah.
marketable,
That would be awesome, actually. I like
you
I could get behind Warthogs.
I could live with that.
That was too easy. What are you guys
So
doing?
we talked about the Sentinels, and one that popped in my head, and I don't know whether I came up with this or I just saw it. And it might suck, I'm not sure. But I wrote down Washington Alliance. I was thinking about like the DC area.
No, that sucks. That
government.
sucks. That kind of sucks.
I wasn't sure, so I appreciate you confirming that one.
I thought you were going to suggest, I actually thought you were going to suggest the raccoons, but
We can't
They are
include this
fierce.
Bruce guy anymore. He doesn't have an opinion about anything. It's
no.
So
Careful,
all right. So
careful what you wish for with me.
more corner case stuff that I've kicked around in my head. I'm not even sure I like it, but I'll throw it out there. And this is very off the beaten path as far as, but the Washington monuments again goes back to see, all right, fair enough. See, John's like, dude, really?
it's payback. It's payback. I have heard that one. I
I've
just think
heard the
it's kinda hard to-
monuments. It's easy. I mean, I hate to say that way, but it's easy.
It
It's,
is.
and I don't know. I guess part of me also is that you look at the teams around here. You have the Nats, the Wiz, the Caps.
Ooh, the whiz. Ooh. Sorry.
you gonna
you
find-
know what? Sorry. I've been in LA now for a long time, and I was a big Bullets fan growing
Well,
up. and-
according to your hat, you like them.
Yeah, and I'm not a big you know what? Yeah. I mean, the hard part for me with the whole Redskin thing is just that's and I mean, we weren't going to go there necessarily, but I mean, it changes everything. It really does. I mean, for me, I always go back to the Wizards begatting from the Bullets, and I never was able to adjust. And it was harder for me in some ways because I didn't live with it every day, being farther away, being in LA. But I mean, growing up with them, it was everything. And I didn't ever equate it with actual Bullets, just like the Redskins. I get why the name had to change. Doesn't make me, I never equated it with the issues. It was just, they were my team, and that was what they were called, and I got behind it. So it's just, yeah, the Wiz, and it hasn't, and you know what, maybe this is a good argument against some of the names because it really has nothing to do with Washington that I'm aware of.
So one of the things that I love, did you guys all watch the video that the Cleveland Indians put out where they had Tom Hanks do the voiceover?
Yeah, I love that.
I thought it was very well done, but I thought the one line out of it that I thought, you know what, if Washington is smart, they will co-opt this and say something. And that is, throughout our history, the important part of the name has always been Cleveland
In Washington.
and the important part of the name is Washington. That's the important part. And what follows it matters, but not in the same way.
I agree. I agree
but-
with you, Bob. I think from a marketing standpoint,
That's it.
Monument is going to be hard to, there's
You're
just
right.
not a lot there to work with. I mean, you're going to have to be a hell of a marketing team.
No, you're right.
Makes-
I was just trying to stay city centric, but get outside of the animate, I guess.
So you talked about DC Defenders as a former franchise name in Washington. I thought, why not bring back Washington Senators? If you're going to go that route where it's like really DC focused, DC history. I know it's the baseball team. I went to Senators games. I hate to admit
Me
that.
too.
I saw
too.
Frank Howard play in
Me
person.
too. Me too.
Be the only group of senators in Washington doing anything right now. So
That's
Yeah,
true.
a lot of people gag at that term, but anyway, that's just one I had in my head.
Well, people might gag at that term, but the people local know that you're renaming a team after something that has already been. That's a team, a sport name. You're not naming it after the people on Capitol Hill. You're naming it because they were the Senators. The baseball team was the Senators.
if we're going to kick that around, what about was the USFL team the Federals?
Yeah, the Federals.
Yeah.
The Feds.
I didn't mind that.
Hey, we could go, we got the Wizards. We could go Washington Warlocks. That's another.
So I'm going to give you guys one more, and I don't know how much comic book you guys are into.
Uh-oh.
But a name that I've had in my mind for a long time, and a couple people have started talking about on social media, is the Juggernaut.
Hmm.
I don't know if you guys are into Marvel,
I know who that is, though. Yeah.
I do.
but I'm going to share my screen with you, and you can't tell me that this is not a marketable image. Like,
Does that make us the Jugs?
yeah, exactly. See, I knew that's where it was going to go. But
Which
if
brings
you
up a
guys-
whole
see,
new
that's the
politically
thing, and
incorrect
I don't
problem.
know how nerdy everybody is, but and I've actually thought about this. You can't really name yourself the DC Juggernaut because it's a Marvel and you'll piss off a lot of fans.
Oh, yeah.
He's
that would
not
be
DC, so it would have to be the Washington Juggernaut or the DMV Juggernaut or something. But there's already like an iconic image that is built into a history, and you expose yourself to a completely different demographic of people that had nothing to do with football before. And when you brought up marketing, if you could work with Marvel and work with them and you could try to reel those type of people in, if you're a businessman, you're talking about some serious following from some people that might never have even paid attention to football before.
And if I'm the guys on the Marvel side of the fence, I'm willing to talk about this.
Right.
Because I mean, that puts my name in front of everybody, in front of how many hundreds of thousands of hundreds millions of people watching football every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And the NFL is a year-round thing now. I mean, it's not like it's just in the fall. The NFL has figured out how to turn this thing into a 12-month must-see TV event, right?
So you
Interesting.
want a brand, you've got now support. If you were trying to get reciprocity, you've got support from movies, you've got support from comic books, you've got support from television, and then the other way, you've got support from the, what do they say? I think the top 5 viewerships last year were all football games of any primetime television show, event, whatever. It was all football games. It's a completely different dynamic of people that you're talking about. And the name's pretty badass.
Do you guys think they're open to not being Washington, to being DC something? Like I wrote down, I just was brainstorming. I had DC Defenders, DC Football Club, DC Devil Dogs, because you know why. DC Dragons, I wrote down. I just wonder if they're really open to that, because I haven't seen a lot of like names floated out there with DC versus Washington.
I almost wonder if they want to go in that direct. How much do they make fun of us because we play in Maryland, our training facilities in Virginia, and our team is named after DC, Washington. You know, you can set yourself apart.
Yeah, but that could change. I mean, that supposedly that may change in the next 5 years. They'll be back, you know, pushes to get them back in DC.
I'll be
Now, and I know that money is king, and the, you know, I know a big part of them finally pulling the trigger on dropping the Redskins was because FedEx finally came out and said we're going to pull everything. But then also, so, you know, DC, one of the things I've heard is that DC keeps saying, till you change the name, we're not even going to entertain you coming back. And now that they have, and you know, Snyder wants to get him back in DC. So I think they'll be back. My guess is they'll be back in DC at some point.
I'll be really, I'm with you, Bruce. I'll be really surprised if now that the name is changing, DC isn't much more open to building a stadium. RFK is slated to be demolished starting in January or February. My guess is that we go right back into that same space with a state-of-the-art facility.
I 100% think so.
Joe Gibbs Stadium. That's what it should
be. If you guys don't have a chance, you should follow Rick Snyder, because he's also a DC historian.
Yeah.
He actually came out with a thing the other day that they've already signed a lease for that property.
Who has?
The city of the
armory, the armory area there again.
The RFK, that there's that the people that live around that area are pushing for retail space, that they don't want another stadium there. So the theory is that it'll never pass to actually be able to put a new stadium where RFK.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, but it doesn't. I mean, that land doesn't even act. That land is controlled by the federal government.
I don't
think what the few people that live around there want, Derek, is going to matter.
No, but what I mean is that
there's
already contracts in place. There's already buildings, you know, things have been agreed upon to start changing that area.
Well, but there's other, I mean, you know, with
money talks.
Money talks. But I mean, look what happened down at the waterfront with the stadium the Nats play in and everything. I mean,
I think that's where you need to look. It
could end up back at the
River,
waterfront. Yeah.
Inner Harbor, or not Inner Harbor, but up there where MGM is, right there.
I don't think the Ravens would like that one. But can you imagine building a stadium like 100 yards from there?
Nothing, not literally the Inner Harbor, but.
So what do you really think we'd end up with 3 stadiums down there? I mean, because DC United's down there too. DC United's almost right across the street from.
I'm talking about across the river, right there, where MGM Grand is, on the Maryland side, right after you get on 490, get across the Woodrow Wilson Bridge on 495.
Over there by the Gaylord.
Yes. National Harbor, not Inner Harbor. National Harbor.
That's it. I was searching for because after you said Inner Harbor, that's all I could think of.
plop a stadium down right there. You can see the stadium. You can see the city from there. I mean, that's a great Monday Night Football shot, and you can't tell me that Dan Snyder doesn't think about that every time he's got a stadium that's 8 miles away from downtown DC.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So guys, does anyone have any other names that were on their list that we need to talk about? Because I want to do a little exercise if we've got them all out there. We good?
Not that I can
nope,
think of.
I'm got all mine out
I
there.
think we're good.
So I want you guys, I want everyone to, we'll just do a quick round the horn. I want you to give your top 3 choices. You don't have to say one, you don't have to put them in your order of preference, but your top 3 choices of names that you think are potential names. So there might be one that you like, but if we don't think realistically has a possibility, don't include that. So your top 3 that you could live with. Derek, putting you on the spot.
Wolves, Sentinels, and I don't know that I like it as much as you guys do, but I do think Football Club is a legitimate contender. I don't know that I would vote for that because I like a mascot, but I think that that's possible.
Washington Football Club or DC Football Club?
Washington Football Club, but they can abbreviate down to DCFC. I mean, you can do whatever at that point. You can do whatever you want. I think I could see Washington Football Club. I don't think one thing that we're also not talking about is football team. There's no way that you tell fans for 2 years that we're going to unveil a new name and it's the same name. They have to change it now. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Like they can't be like our journey to a new name, a new identity, a new everything, and then new name coming spring of 2022. Oh, by the way, we're just going to keep it what it is now. Like that's just not going to happen. You want to talk about a way to alienate and unmarket yourself.
All right, Paul, you're up.
Yeah, so I think realistically, top 3 names that I can live with and top 3 names that I think can become a possibility. Number 1, I'll say Wolves. I'm personally not necessarily a fan of it, but I think it's probably going to be the direction they go in.
It's livable.
Secondly, as I mentioned earlier, that city-centric approach with Sentinels. And I think the outsider would probably be the Washington, D.C. FC as a third name. I mentioned before my preference is burgundy and gold, but like you guys hashed out, it's likely not going to come to fruition.
All right. Bob, what do you got?
You know, I'm going to make it 3 for 3. I think Wolves, Sentinels, and some form of football club, whether it's Washington Football Club or DCFC. However, after listening to Derek, I feel like that may be too close to Washington Football Team to be considered a quote unquote new name after 2 years of we're going to give you a new name. We're going to give you a new name. And again, I'm not sure anybody in Ashburn is brave enough to go there.
All right. What do you think, Bruce?
For some reason, I like Red Wolves. Just maybe the rhythm of it because it's closer to Redskin. You know what I mean? Sentinels has grown on me. I'm not thrilled with it, but it's growing on me. I don't know if it's on a list or not, but I really like what you said about the Warthogs.
Yeah.
Just because it does make me think of the Hogs a little bit. I wish we could just go with 5 O'Clock Club. That might be better, but
The Blind Pigs.
yeah. and I mean, Washington Football Club doesn't bump me terribly, but I marketability wise.
He said what you think is realistic, not what your preference would be.
Okay. Realistically, I think Red Wolves is still in play. I think Sentinels is in play. I think I don't know if Warthogs would be in play, but if it were, I would think it's realistic. Yeah, there you go. I think that's probably where I land.
So I'm gonna go with the consensus for the most part. I'm gonna go Wolves, Sentinels, and I like DC Defenders a lot, but I just haven't. I think I haven't heard anyone say that outside of this podcast. So
Right.
I think that's a fantasy one. So I'm going to go with Warthogs. And I do think that has a lot of potential.
Are people talking about that one? Is that
I've
on?
heard there's a contingent out there that on social media that likes hogs. I've heard Warhogs, which again, I think
Nah,
doesn't make a lot of sense. And I've heard Warthogs. So, and I know
Warthogs is probably the leader in my clubhouse. If I had a choice, it would probably be Warthogs.
Yeah.
Because if they really want to encapsulate the history and have some sort of a bridge to the next level, every Redskins fan knows what the Hogs are.
yeah.
Every Redskins fan born at, pre 1995 knows the Hogs. And even those born after that have heard about it from older fans, from their dads, watching video, watching the history. They know the Hogs. Even Trent Williams tried to be the Hogs 2.0.
I think you would have more support out of the gate than a lot of these other things, with the possible exception of Wolves, which frankly I've never really understood from the historical standpoint or even the regional standpoint. I mean, it's cool from an alliterative standpoint because you've got the WW, but it's not like Wolves play a big part in Washington, D.C. anywhere, any way, shape, or form. I've never really understood the desire other than it's an animal mascot that nobody else has.
Well, I think if you look at the NFL, half the teams have names that are associated with the area and the other half don't. So,
And you know what, a lot of that in other sports as well has to do with the fact that people have, teams have relocated in some cases. That's
Yeah, but if you look at the Pittsburgh
guy in a
Penguins,
Laker hat.
there ain't no Penguins in Pittsburgh except at the damn zoo.
no, and there's not much
No.
jazz in Utah.
Or Toronto
So,
Blue Jays. How many?
right.
I mean,
And LA is not known as the land of 1,000 lakes.
And we never,
Right.
and the Dodgers, that's purely a New York, trolley Dodger.
because they moved from Brooklyn and they just never changed their name.
Right. And the
Oh.
Lakers, exactly. The Lakers, I mean, that's from Minneapolis and Minnesota. So
I got nervous a week or so ago because I saw one of the fan ambassadors, not to say that in a mocking tone, but it just concerns me because some of the things I'm seeing that some of those folks say on social media is weird. But I heard one of them floating or saw one of them floating Commanders as if that was one. I mean, it kind of seemed like he was floating it for someone.
That
And,
one's neutral for me. Like I don't hate it, but it's not going to be one I'm excited about.
no.
I don't really understand that one.
What I don't want to see is Red Tails or Red Hawks or some of the other names out there. I don't know. With the Red Tails, what frustrates me, and I figured we would at least talk about some of the ones we didn't like at some point on this podcast.
Fair.
Is the Red Tail. I mean, I understand Red Tails, but if you're going to change the name due to some sort of sympathy towards a specific demographic, don't name it after another specific demographic.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just stay away from it. If you're going to stay away from Indians or Native Americans, because they're not Indians, stay away from stay away from anything that could be related to race.
I kind of
Good
want
or
to stay
bad?
away from red. I kind of want to, I mean, if we're going to get rid of it, let's get rid of the entirety thing, right? I don't want to get rid of skins and trade it for wolves or tails or something else. Get rid of red.
I agree with you, Bob, because it just feels like it's forced. And I think it's like, oh, we're going to sing hail to the Red Tails. I mean, it kind of feels like that's the reason you would be picking that name.
You could say hail to the Warthogs. It kind
The
of
name
works,
is
actually.
gone. The name is gone, and we need to do something totally different. I mean,
Yeah. Agreed.
and I hated Red Wolves out of the gate until I heard Commanders and some of the other ones. So- and I'm like, maybe
See,
that wouldn't be
I'm
so
against
bad.
I'm against Red Wolves. I'm not for Red Wolves, but just wolves.
Yeah.
If you want to call them the Wolves, that's fine.
I think that would be a night. And there is a huge, and again, I don't know how many fans they really represent, but the team has to have realized that Red Wolves is by far the most vocally supported name on the web anywhere. It
Well,
is.
they've got Fred Smoot. Fred Smoot is screaming about Red Wolves.
So I think Wolves would at least semi-satisfy those folks. But who knows?
All right, boys.
We did it, man. We waited. It took us, how long has it been? 2 years yet? A year and a half? How long we been at this name
It's
debate?
been a while.
We put it off for as long as we could.
We did. So If you guys have nothing more, I can cut this off. But it's been a good conversation. Appreciate
Been
everybody.
fun.
And
Thanks for having me on. That was a lot of fun.
yeah,
So you
that's
know what
we
this
try to
means,
do.
right? Before we go, you know that the only thing we've guaranteed is that Red Wolves, Wolves, Sentinels, Washington Football Club, and Warthogs have no chance in hell of being the new.
Yeah,
name.
pretty much.
You watch, it'll be ambassadors.
Probably.
All right, gentlemen. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Bruce, thanks for hanging in there, man.
Oh, dude, it was great. I've been texting